Right, hi boys and girls, welcome to a bit of science with Miss Logan today. So to start us off, we're going to be starting a new topic on microorganisms today. So to start us off, we've got a true or false starter here. So the first question, and you need to answer true or false to all of these. Number one, every day the human body produces 300 million new cells. So do you think that is true or do you think that is false? Have a think about that and write that down. Right, number two, the human body has 10,000 miles of blood vessels. True or false? Write that one down. And the last one, your lungs can excrete waste. What do we think, true or false? So hopefully you've written all those down. If you need to pause and fill in those answers now, that's absolutely fine. The first one is actually true. 300 million new cells every single day. So that's really good. The human body has 10,000 miles of blood vessels. This one's actually false. It's actually 60,000 miles, which is amazing. It's a really long way. And your lungs can excrete waste. This is actually true. You might not think of it, but lungs excrete waste in gas form. And we've talked about this in our previous topic. Carbon dioxide is what your lungs excrete. So that one is actually true. Right, boys and girls, moving on to what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. I'll be filming quite a few of these as much as I can to put them onto YouTube for you guys to follow along with. Today we're looking at microorganisms, the benefits and harms of microorganisms. We're going to be studying a gentleman called Carl Linnaeus, and we're going to talk about how to group animals and plants according to a classification key, which is something you would have talked about in year 4 as well. Right. So before you begin today, I'm going to talk you through what you're going to need, okay? Because we're going to do a little experiment. So I've got this. You might see this throughout the lesson. It's a little pause sign. It means you might need to pause the video and go off and do something, okay? So in this case, you're going to need 4 slices of bread. So I've got my bread here. You'll need 4, or if you're a little bit low, you can always have 2 slices and cut it into halves, but you do need 4 separate pieces. You'll need a little bit of dirt from outside, a little bit of grass, something a bit dirty from outside. Some anti-bac spray, which I've got right here. I'm sure we all have some of that around. And also 4 resealable plastic bags. Now I've got quite large ones, but the smaller ones are absolutely fine as well. Okay, so you can pause now and go and gather that up. Now if you don't have those things or you don't want to participate, that's absolutely fine. You can still watch. What I'll be doing is I'll be posting some updates in the future as well. So if you just want to observe, that's absolutely fine as well. Right, so now that we've got all of our things ready, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing. So to start off with, we've got some key vocabulary here. We're going to be talking about bacteria. Now bacteria is a single-celled organism. Now what does that mean, single-celled? So in our last topic, we talked a lot about cells, things like how our hearts have specific cells, brains have separate cells. Bacteria is just one single cell, the entire organism. So they're very different, obviously, from humans. They're neither plants nor animals. And they usually measure only a few micrometers, which is 0.001 millimeters in length. So you can imagine how tiny that is. And they often live in communities of millions. Okay, so bacteria is something we're going to be talking about today. Disinfectant, which is a little bit like this. It's a chemical liquid that destroys bacteria, and in some cases it actually doesn't destroy it, but it does stop its growth. So it stops it from reproducing. Here we have hygiene, which is something I think we've all been talking a lot about lately. And that is just conditions which enable health and cleanliness to be maintained and prevent disease. Contaminants is sort of the opposite of that. It's when you add a contaminant to something, it makes it impure. Okay, it's no longer hygienic. Okay, so those are our key vocabulary terms for today. Now here is the funny little story about our investigation. Basically, before work, Mr. James ate a sandwich that Miss Lockie had made for him. However, the next day he felt very unwell. He went to visit the doctor and he was told he had food poisoning. So naturally he's going to be looking into what was it that Miss Lockie gave him. We need to investigate the bakery where Miss Lockie bought the bread to find out what the quality of the bread she bought. So we're going to be conducting an investigation to see what the effect of different variables or contaminants, like we talked about earlier, will have on a piece of bread over a given period of time. Now this will be up to you how long that given period of time is, 1 week or 2 weeks, basically as long as your parents are willing to have bags of bread all over your house. So what we want to think about to start with is what happens to food that's left for a period of time. So what would you expect to happen if you left some food out for a period of time? Have a think about that. That's right. Hopefully what you were thinking of, it would grow some mold. It would go bad. It would grow mold. Now we all know what mold is. We've seen it on food. You might see it in some damp places as well. But what is mold? Okay, you might know what it looks like, but what is it actually? So here we have another pause button. It's a good opportunity. Pause the video here and go back into Google open another tab if you can. Go into Google and Google mold facts for kids. See if you can find out what mold actually is. Okay, so you can pause here. Now, hopefully through your little bit of research, you would have come across some of the similar information that I did. So mold is a type of fungus. Now, you might have heard the word fungus before. Try and think, what was another common type of fungus? Hopefully you came up with this one. Mushrooms are a type of fungus. So mold is actually closely related to mushrooms. I knew there was a reason I didn't like mushrooms. So mold grows in spores, which float around in the air. And that's partially why you might have heard that mold can be quite dangerous. You know, if you have mold in your house, it can be really, really bad for you because they float around in the air, which means you can then inhale it and can get into your respiratory system and cause a lot of problems. There are thousands of different types of mold, and they're often seen in wet places. Now, this is what I found most interesting. It's not all just about fuzzy food, okay? Some molds do cause diseases and food spoilage, but actually certain types are used to make some types of cheeses, actually, which you might be surprised to know, and even antibiotics. So those of you who've heard of the antibiotic called penicillin, it's actually made from a type of mold, okay? So mold can actually be really, really useful when used properly. Right, experiment time. Super exciting. So, as I showed you at the beginning, hopefully you have your bread, your antibac, and your bags, okay? So what you're going to do now, you're going to pause, and I want you to label all 4 of your bags. And as you can see, this is what they should be labeled as. I've put the date on mine as well, just because there was a spot for it, and it helps you remember. So we've got one called Control, one called Antibac, one called Dirt, and one called Fridge. Okay, and we're going to talk about what we're going to be doing with that, but I'd like you to just pause here and label all of that for me. Great. So you'll notice that one of them is called Control. Now have a think, is there any idea what that might mean, a control group, when it comes to an experiment? So what that means is it's part of the experiment that's kept the same. So we're not going to do anything to that piece of bread. We're going to just leave it, and it's really useful for comparisons. So we'll be able to compare it to, this is when I did nothing to my piece of bread, and these are the other ones. Okay. So we're going to put in, now I have really clean hands, I've washed my hands before this. Make sure you have clean hands when you put your control group. Again, you don't have to have such large bags as I do. You're going to put one slice of bread by itself without doing anything to it. And that's your control group, and you want to seal that up. Okay, and you leave that off to the side. So that's going to be, we've done nothing to it. Now, the one that you've written fridge on it, and you might want to put a little note on this, science experiment, do not eat, if you're going to be putting it in your fridge, is very similar to the control. We're not going to do anything to it, you're just going to keep it in the fridge and see what effect that keeping it in a cool place will have. So again, just like the control, you're not doing anything to it, you're just putting it in the fridge. Okay, this one here, I'm putting Antibac. So you're going to take this out, and really carefully, you'll probably want an adult around to help you do this. You're going to just spray it onto the bread. Might do a little bit on both sides. Okay, and then you'll put that into your bag as well and seal that up. Now, for the dirt one, I don't actually have a little pot of dirt or anything like that, but I'm just going to rub it onto the dirty carpet a little bit and see if it gets some dirt from down there. Okay, so it's a little bit dirty, get a bit of dirt on it. If you do have a bit of dirt from your garden, you can rub that in it as well. So that is the one that's been rubbed dirty. So I've now got, if you want to just show that, my 4 different experiments here. Now, from here, it's just time to wait a little bit. So what we're going to be doing, I'm going to be posting this on the school website so you can see sort of the write-up. We're going to write, as we usually do with an experiment, the method, the variables, and the prediction. Okay? So after you've done that, you can write this up or you can have a look at it on the website. But what I'd really like you to do is write a prediction. Okay? What is going to happen, do you think, over the next couple of days or weeks to each of these pieces of bread? So you might predict that the piece of bread that's kept in the fridge will be the most contaminated. Or maybe it's the piece of bread with the dirt on it that will be the most contaminated. But I do want you to make a prediction, and then we can see if that prediction is true. Okay, so once you've done that, like I said, this is something that takes place over a little bit of time. So what I've done here is some examples of some observations. So maybe every couple of days you want to go and check on your bread, wherever you're keeping them. You'll have 1 piece in the fridge. The other 3 can just sort of be kept on a shelf somewhere out of the way, wherever your parents think is appropriate. So I might say on April 3rd, I noticed that the bread in the fridge is whatever you might see. The bread with the anti-bac looks as though, yeah, so you're going to just fill in those blanks. What does it look like? What are you seeing? Okay? And you'll do that over a couple of days, every couple of days maybe, write some observations. And maybe after a week or 2 weeks, you'll then draw up some conclusions. Okay? Now, if you aren't participating in this and you're just observing, that's fine. What I'm going to do, I'm going to keep these, and I'll be posting my own on YouTube, little updates, after a week and after 2 weeks of what I can see, and you can write your own observations through that. Okay? So, I think that's it. Until next time, hope you enjoyed it.